Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a forest gardener and a forest garden designer. And welcome to a Wednesday's live stream on Wednesday, the 10th of February at 10 a.m. And today I wanted to talk to you about how much a forest garden costs. I thought it'd be a really interesting exercise for two reasons, really. Firstly, how much does it cost? When I first started forest gardening in earnest about 6 years ago, I think it was, I waded in and I just, bought plants, went, oh dear, and just piled in and put down ground cover and put shrubs in and put a polytunnel in. I never actually added it up. So I thought it'd be a good exercise to add it up so you actually see the cost of it. And secondly, it's something I think an awful lot of people in gardening in general and forest gardening specifically do not talk about, is the economic aspect of gardening. And I think it's actually quite healthy to say this is how much something costs. Sure, you can do it yourself, but it is good to do it yourself, but not everybody can afford the luxury of time. There are a few people who live very off-grid and live a life which is kind of self-sustaining, that's great, that's good, and it's a really, people do things for different reasons, but people have got different resources and different experiences and different education. So I think if you can open it up by saying this is how much a forest garden costs on this scale, then that provides some sort of guidelines and some sort of ideas and brings it into more common acceptance, more common kind of use. So like forest gardening kind of gets put into the mainstream. The reason why I thought about doing this was because I have been, if you watched last week's riveting episode, I have been forest garden landscaping at an eco homes development in West Wales, and it's just really kind of interesting to see the process and to see what's involved and how you cost a job and what your labour's worth and what the people will accept and what they won't accept. So I thought, well, how much would it cost to create a 1 acre forest garden from scratch? And I just think the reasons for doing this really is because if you can show somebody the cost of it, this is how much it is, and this is how much all the various components cost of it, they can choose then what to do themselves and what to get someone else in to do, and it frees things up. Not everybody can afford the time to grow their own plants. Not everyone has the luxury of owning land already. So yeah, it's just to give a bit of a framework, give some guidelines to it. That was it. And the other kind of key thing is, for example, on the eco homes development, because people are moving in who possibly don't have much of an idea about gardening, almost definitely have no idea about forest gardening. But if you present it to them and involve them in that process and say, this is what I'm doing with the community aspect of it, here's a website and it has a list of all the plants in your house, in your property. This is the tree that you have. This is when it comes into blossom. This is when it comes into fruit. These are the fruit bushes that you have. This is the ground cover that you have. These are the jobs that need doing. You need to prune, and you need to weed, and you need to mow, and you've got to watch out for brambles, and da-da-da-da-da. So you involve people in the process. They get a crop from it, but the setup is already there. And I think if we kind of look at it like providing people with forest gardens, sure, they're not involved in it. I'll come to this in a second. They're not involved in the actual design of it, and that is something that is lacking. And that is a lack of kind of ownership. But it's a system which is up and running. It's something that you have been provided with, and then you're provided with the tools to manage that. So people are more likely to go, oh, great, so okay, I can use this, I can use that, rather than doing everything from scratch themselves. I mean, I've been very lucky in that I've had the time and the opportunity and the money to do this for myself, but not everybody has that luxury. So if you provide people with it, rather like providing people with an eco home, which is insulated, which is is self-sufficient pretty much in electricity, which is very cheap to run, then they don't have. Ideally, people would build their own eco homes and get involved in the process, and there is an awful lot to be said for that. But not everybody has the luxury. Not everyone can do this. So that's the other reason. I'm gonna get a move on because I've gotta get finished by past. I will just quickly check the chat as well. So greetings everybody. Alex, thank you. Good morning to you and Lynn and Pete and Abby and other people who I don't recognise. But good to see everybody. Okay. Now, let's get cracking. So the outline today, I am going to go through it in a kind of step-by-step process. This isn't, I'm kind of thinking this is a little bit on the old dull side, but it is an eye-opener. I have found it really, really interesting to actually do this process and add up the actual kind of monetary cost of it. I think, I do think it's good to talk about money. I really do. I mentioned Marxism earlier on and kind of Marxist theory. And I am absolutely kind of fascinated about the role of money in a capitalist society, and also what alternative uses there are, and what the issue actually isn't with money itself per se, but it's to do with the power structures, the existing power structures, and ownership. So I think that's a really, really interesting kind of thing to look at. Is just how does money fit into the scheme of things, and also in a forest garden as well. So the criteria is it's 1 acre of land, which is 0.4 hectares for my metric cousins. I generally tend to use metric when I'm doing a plan. I'll use meters as my unit because it's a hell of a lot easier to calculate stuff rather than acres. So that's 0.4 of a hectare. Alex has said in the chat that that's a lot of land, and it is a lot of land. I had a look at, there's some woodland. It's ancient woodland in Herefordshire has come up for sale from in the Woodland Trust website, and that was like £16,000 an acre. So that's kind of really pricey. It's slightly different, but I think the price, I can't remember actually what the price is. About £10,000 around here, is it? Possibly, no, probably less at the moment, but it's thousands and thousands of pounds. So it's a fair old chunk of money. So. And the reason I've chosen an acre, Alex, is because it's something that people can recognise and visualise, and it is a big space. But a lot of the calculations you can kind of scale them back. I originally did the calculations for 100 metre square, and then what I've done for some of the calculations is just scale them up to 4,000 square metres, which is an acre. So that's the first thing. It's setting the scene. This is a photograph of the 1 acre field that the initial forest garden is on. It was a pasture, rough pasture, so unimproved, quote unquote unimproved pasture, which means no fertilizers or pesticides being used on it for years and years. And you get an idea of the space. It's a big old space. I've done a rough calculation for the perimeter, and this is just to calculate the windbreaks. So it's roughly 60 meters on a square. It would be about 60 meters square. That's just kind of the sides of a square piece of 0.4 hectares, which works out at roughly 250 meters. So I use that price when calculating the windbreak hedges. All the prices are in British pounds, and this is going to look really interesting bit. How much do you charge for your time? And this is in the UK, and I charge £500 per day as my top whack for design. So I thought, what the hell? This is how much. This is how much I charge, because it's. How do you charge it? Obviously I don't charge this to everybody. It depends upon the situation. It depends upon the people I'm doing the work for. But it is a going rate. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've learned a fair old bit about different plants, and have developed my skills in creating maps and plans and schedules and spreadsheets and all the rest of it. And that's the kind of going rate for garden design is £500 a day. And then for labouring, that works out at £200 a day. So that's for gardening rather than labouring. It's not. It's planting and putting things in place. Yeah, putting stuff into place and knowing where to put things and tweaking stuff. So those are the different rates. That's a kind of garden labouring on one side, and then the design on the other. Because the garden labouring, I can get other people to come in and do the work. But those figures are top whack. That's kind of commercial rates. That's what I'm kind of charging it out at. But I thought, do that. You can always change these numbers, and you can always find someone who'll do it cheaper. But there we go. And it's a greenfield site. Now, what I do think is really important is that a lot of people will say this is the cost of the land. Bloody hell! Oh, Gemma's just said on the chat, agricultural land in Shropshire is going for about £15,000 an acre. Crikey! Yeah. Well, it's just it is just a lot of money. So this is a greenfield site, and now the advantage of a greenfield site is that you don't have as much work to do. If you have existing buildings or structures or foundations, or there's existing woodland or it's scrubland, that's a lot more work. It really, really is. And it's a tricky one. This is a really, really tricky one. There's no simple answer to how you deal with it. The greenfield site is quite straightforward. You're replacing grass. Well, I say it's quite straightforward. You're replacing grass with a forest garden, so there is more biodiversity. But whenever you're changing something, you're also destroying habitat. No matter what the habitat is, you've got to be aware that you are actually destroying habitat. So the grass here is there's a whole load of different species of plant in there. Geraniums and lady's smock, and there's docks, and there's thistles, and there's creeping buttercup, and there's just all sorts of different grasses, an amazing range of different grasses. I was quite surprised. I don't know much about grasses, so I can't give you the range of species. And it's been there for years and years, and the turf is really, really thick. And when by putting a forest garden in there, I've actually destroyed a lot of habitat, and this is what you do have to be aware of. So if you're doing this on scrubland, it's the same. It's the same thing. You are destroying habitat. You're replacing with something that should be more beneficial. But always, always, always be aware of the existing ecology and accommodate that and include that in your plans, in your designs. It might just look like a big old mound of bramble with a load of ash coming through, but that's someone's home. So, yeah, just do have to be aware of that bit. And then the other thing is, this is south facing and it's flat. This is actually not that flat. Flat land is actually an awful lot easier to work. If you get like steep land, but it's 20 degrees here in some points, and that's a bit too steep to work on. But flat land is better. Okay, so let's get cracking. So for surveying and mapping. Oh, sorry, Alex has just come up with some land. Sorry, I maybe shouldn't look at the chat while I'm talking. £25,000 per acre in the south for agricultural land. Okay, but that's kind of interesting. It's good to get the prices out there. Let me just pop that there. Right, I'm going to cover up the chat because I'm getting distracted. So, surveying and mapping, really, really, really important part of this. Ideally, you talk to a lot of forest gardeners and people into permaculture and kind of ecology. You want to spend a lot of time being with your land, looking at your land, seeing what lives there, doing a survey, a wildlife survey, and just making notes about where the water rises in the winter, where it dries up in the summer, what existing native plants are there. This is a lot more work than you can do if you come into a job. You just come in and then basically I'll do a day measuring up on the site and making notes, but it can't replace that intimate knowledge that you have with the land. So that really does come down, if you are there and you live there, then that's something that you kind of have to do yourself. But I would take a day to mark up all the features on the land and to measure it up. Now, what I do with an acre, again, it's easier with a large area like an acre. I'll use a satellite map as a kind of the basis for a plan, and then I will draw the outlines upon it, and then I'll measure up, but always physically measure the land as well, and then map that out on the satellite. So the satellite photograph is a guide really. So it's one day on site, marking up the features, looking at the native plants that are already on site, and physically measuring it, and then one day from that to get the satellite photograph, create a map over the top of it, and put all the put stuff in. So it can get tricky. As soon as you start to have buildings, then it adds up to the time. So I'll show you actually. I did a plan for my neighbour and friend Dan, and where is he? Whoops, see, there it is. There's a house. They have a house here, and as soon as you start to get into drawing houses, it takes up an awful lot more time. So the more structures and the existing paths, then that actually does start to add on to the time. So do be aware of that. So 2 days, £500, £1,000. Okay, and then the design aspect. Now, when I do a design, I use CAD because it's quick and it's accurate, and it's the best thing about CAD is that you can calculate areas to calculate out how many plants you want, and also to see where the ultimate diameter of the tree canopies will be, so you can work out for shade as well where the aspect of the land in relationship to the trees. So this is what I've done for Dan. Oh, come back. So this is what I've done for Dan, and you can see there's the trees are the circles. It's all kind of that north-south axis, and putting in paths and hedges and all sorts of stuff. So it's very it's kind of simple, but it does take quite a bit of time. So the key thing is to get your windbreaks in. And to look at the aspect of the land and work out the diameter of the trees. Those are the two kind of key structural elements, and also in any kind of design how it relates to the space being used. So that's what I do when I do a CAD plan. And how much does it cost? So I also create a website. So it's all very well having a plan. The whole point of a plan is so you can play with ideas for yourself, and secondly you can communicate those ideas with the people who are either putting the plants in, or the people who are living there, or both, or it's a means of communicating ideas. That's what a plan does. That's a function that it fulfills, and it's also used for documenting as well. So I have this I use a bit of software called Simple Note, which is a really simple way of publishing web pages. So this is what I've done for Dan and Sarah. I've created this is where the plan is, these are the features, and this is the grass circle. There's a couple of features in there as well, and I've done a list of plants too. So you can see trees, hedging, shrubs, perennial veg, vines and climbers. So nice and simple. These are the plants that I recommend, and with links to them. Now, what I did find with the Eco Homes job is that the list of plants, you're actually better off. You can do it here. Yes. You're actually better off creating a spreadsheet, because then you can calculate numbers more easily as well, particularly if you've got more than one type of a plant. So this is invaluable if you are doing large areas too. So using CAD, you can calculate the area easily, and then you can work out the cost of the plants for ground cover and the number, and then you can put that on a spreadsheet and the cost as well. So this is really useful. I really don't like Google. Google are an opaque company, and they sell advertising. They're an advertising company, and they use your data for their own nefarious means. So I don't like Google at all, but the Google spreadsheets are very useful, and it means because you can share the spreadsheet with people, you can communicate those ideas with other people. If anyone's got any, if anyone has any spreadsheets, online spreadsheets that they use which are kind of equivalent to Google spreadsheets, do let us know, because I'll use them instead. But that's what I'm using at the moment. So really, really useful way of communicating information, and I'll create a plant list with that as well. And then creating the design. So there's a website, the spreadsheet, and then the design and the plan. And the plan actually does, I mean, I've got a very rough one for Dan. I didn't do like a really detailed plan. But there's, these are the different steps that I'd recommend that you do. Now, if you can get really involved with scheduling, just in terms of you can put in dates and times and how long things will take and estimates and all the rest of it. Depends how, depends who's doing it, and depends how much detail you want to go into and how big the job is. So but always do have a plan. You've got a design, but how do you implement that design? And always going back to this idea of, this is again what I'm doing with the Eco Homes project, is I really want to have this as part of a communication with the people who are moving in. So first of all, I am going to say to them, these are the plants that are in the development, and these, so everyone can see what everyone else has got. And they're all, the plants are fruiting at different times of the year. So hopefully there'll be a communication between the neighbours, and they'll share the produce between them, because not everybody can eat all the apples off an apple tree by themselves. So they'll naturally share amongst themselves. But then facilitate this process. So to set up a residents association, so that they can get training for doing the pruning and the weeding themselves, and propagating hopefully as well. So that when that's set up, and the next stage, there's a 1 acre site on the Eco Homes project where I want to involve the residents. You actually involve the people who will use it and say, how would you like to use this land? You've got kids, you've got, I don't know, 3-year-old kids, or you've got teenage kids, or you've got elderly parents living with you, or whatever it is. How do you want to use the land? And you'll just get so much more input and ideas, and also people will feel like they own it and will take care of it, which is all what it's about, is taking care of the land. So that's a bit further on the line. So 4 days, £500, that's £2,000. And then windbreaks. First thing to do, always put in windbreaks. A lot of this stuff, I keep on saying this, but a lot of this stuff you can grow yourself. But this is to buy plants. Ideally, you have the time, the expertise, and the space. You can grow the plants yourself, and it's an awful lot cheaper. It works out. But this is buying stuff, so I'm going with buying things. And hedging plants, bare root, buy them in winter. You've got about another month until March until you can plant them out. They're much cheaper to buy, and you can get some really nice plants. I bought some Cornus sericea, Siberica, or Alba, Cornus Alba Siberica, I think actually it was. But the roots are about that big, and the top growth was about that big. Just incredible amount of plant for it was £1.75 or something. It was crazy. There's 250 metres roughly of perimeter on a 1 acre site. So at 500 plants, £2 each, that's £1,000 for the windbreak hedges. That's a really rough figure, but it's it'll be about £1,000 for a windbreak. And that's just to go around the outside. Obviously, you might want to have more windbreaks. And then to mulch and plant that many plants, I reckon it'll be about 3 days. 3 days labour, gardening labour, £200 a day. That's £600. So that's £1,600 for the windbreaks. Windbreaks go in first. Protect, get them growing, get them established. Here, I wish I'd put in more windbreaks at the beginning. What you also, depending upon your situation and how much protection you have, you might also want to consider putting in dead hedges at this stage. Dead hedges are just made up of they're temporary structures, and they're made up of brash, like branches and things that you've chopped down, and they just protect the plants that you put in later on. So they're kind of a temporary windbreak basically until your windbreaks get established. Now do bear in mind that getting your windbreaks established can take years. Like so here in the more exposed spot, we've still got like Rosa rugosa. Planted as windbreak hedge is still only like a metre and a half tall, and not very thick at all. So that's not working. Going back, I would put a dead hedge in. So £1,600. Next up is the features. I really do think that you've got to do. This is about doing everything at the same time. And the three features that I'd really, 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 really recommend is a polytunnel, somewhere warm where you can grow a range of different produce, because I like tomatoes and chilies are my thing. And also you can extend the growing season for perennial vegetables, and I've started putting perennial plants in. I'd love, okay, this is something this is down the line, but I want to do more looking at a perennial polytunnel and the crops that you can grow in the perennial way in a polytunnel, because it'll be less labour involved in it. So I've started to put things like Chilean guava and strawberries, and I've got a grapevine, and I want to grow some perennial kale in a polytunnel as well, just to keep it the whole system kind of ticking over throughout the year as well. And we've got the biggest polytunnel we could afford. Actually, yeah, it's okay. I don't actually use it to its full potential, but you're looking around about £800 for a kind of smaller polytunnel. I can't remember the size. Yeah. For a large polytunnel, you're looking around about £800, and installation here it's around about £600. I think it was about 2-3 days to put it in, and the guy's done a fantastic job on it as well. And then a wildlife pond, is brilliant, just as a feature in its own right. So pond liner is about £400 for a fair sized pond, and pond installation. Get a digger in to do it. Well, you can do it by hand, but if you're going to have a digger in to do other parts of other landscaping, then get the digger to do it, because it's a damn sight quicker. So roughly about £700. And then compost bays. I made ours out of pallets, because we do have annual vegetables. There's somebody on their National Forest Gardening Scheme forum was saying, leave a sunny spot for starchy stuff, and I thought that's very good advice. We do grow potatoes here as well, and yeah, compost is always a very useful thing to have to spread onto your annual veg beds. Don't need them in other parts of the forest garden, but there we go. So those are the three features, £2,300. Yep, and then the canopy layer, the actual trees themselves, and I've done a very rough approximate guess at this. £25 is about the price you'd pay for an apple MM106. I think it's £23 or something like that, but this is just a rough idea. So roughly £25, 50 trees. I did a quick head count here on the plan, and that's £1,250. Planting 4 days to plant that many trees. That's kind of mulching and digging and putting them in, and so maybe less, but say £800. So that's £2,050. And then Groundworks. This is a controversial bit. Well, actually, it's not that controversial, I think. Firstly, you need to mow the grass. If you've got a greenfield site, before you get a digger in, you need to mow the grass, and hiring a brush cutter, because we've actually got I'd love to get a brush cutter here. This is something I would get first of all, because it is actually a very useful piece of kit if you've got a lot of land, to keep the brambles down. If you're going to plant some land up, it's really, really would recommend, if you've got a lot of land, get your own brush cutter if you can afford it. But brush cutter hire for 1 day, £200, and then clearing the grass. I would say there's lots of different ways to do it. If you have the time, that you can use cardboard, and you can weigh the cardboard down, and then get waste cardboard, use cardboard as a mulch, and then take the cardboard up after a few months and plant into it, or plant directly into the cardboard, put some compost on top. There's a variety of different ways of doing it like that. That's the kind of the best way of doing it ecologically. But I have been using woven plastic sheet mulch, but I really, 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 really don't want to use plastic anymore. It's cheap, and it's kind of quite an easy way of doing it, and it kind of works. After you leave the grass, the sheet mulch down, after 6 months, it kills off the grass, and you pull the sheet mulch up, and you can plant straight into it. Put a bark mulch down, plant straight into it. But I don't want to use plastic anymore. It doesn't go away, it doesn't disappear. Use it a couple, 2-3 times, and then you just got to chuck it away. So, and it doesn't disappear, it never goes away. So I don't want to use plastic anymore. And for me, for large scale stuff like 1 acre, a mini digger hire is way better. It's way better. You scrape the top layer of grass off, and then I would use that for various features around the garden, like for various mounds, and putting windbreak hedges on too. And that's basically for 1 day. I think it's about 6/10 of the land that we've got here is underground cover, and you can do that in 1 day. So here, a mini digger hire and driver is hire, and a driver for 1 day is about £250. So that's £450 to get the ground prepped, and then ground cover. And this is really, really interesting because what you've got is to just calculate the number of plants per square metre. So normally you have between 3 and 5 plants per metre square, depending upon the type of species that it is and the vigor of the plant and how much weeding you want to do. I didn't add bark mulch into this. Oh, there we go. I'll have to add that later on. And I have actually bought, for the Eco Homes job, I have bought plug plants. And if you're not growing, this is stuff like ground ivy that I've been growing myself in a raised bed. And if you haven't got the time or the space to grow your own, plug plants are the way to go. So they're about that big, that deep, about that wide. But if you get a decent plug plant, it has a really good root structure on it. It's the kind of cheapest and it's the quickest way of doing it as well. It's actually far, far easier to plant out plug plants because you take the tray with you and you throw the plug plants onto the ground and plant them in. And it's much, much quicker and easier than 9 centimetre pots, which are far bulkier. So, and if you buy them in bulk, you can get them, which is bonkers, really, really bonkers, for about 40 pence each, which is really, really crazy. Now, there's 2 places I'm going to get them from. There's Barry and Sandra at Celtic Wildflowers. They're fantastic. I absolutely love them. I'm doing some work with them with the community interest company about the wildflower gallery. So they do. I didn't realise that they actually do plug plants as well. And I bought some plug plants from British Wildflower Plants. Spoke to a chap called Matt there. And yeah, they're super cheap. So plug plants are the way to go. But even so 6/10 of 4,000 square meters is 2,400 square meters. At 3 plants per meter square, that's 7,200 plants. And at 40 pence each, that's £2,880. £3,000 worth. But in the grand scheme of things, it's actually, it's fairly cheap. So this is, if you're doing it, if you do it, you propagate stuff yourself and you have the time and the space, then you can do it yourself. But if you want to do it all in one go, this is the way to do it. You could probably get that price down, to be honest. I'd imagine it's worth looking around. And then the labour as well. So the labour, I've kind of figured it out at about 7 hours per 100 metre square. And that's to put the bark mulch down. I haven't got the bark mulch price down. That works out about a tonne per 100 metre square. And it's about, I can't remember the price for it. I'll have to add the bark mulch price on there. Sorry about that. So 24 days at £200 a day. That's £4,800 in labour. So that's best part of a month planting up the ground cover, which is a lot of time. Possibly, might be able to get that time down, to be honest. But £7,680, that's a big old chunk of time. It's just the sheer area and the amount of labour involved in it, I think, is the absolute killer on that one. And then shrubs. Again, I've done a real rough approximation. This includes perennial veg as well. So there's some perennial vegetables that you want to put in there, but I've just kind of put it all together. So 50 shrubs, about £10 each, £500, and then planting is about £400. So it's around about £900, £1,000 mark. Not too much detail, but there we go. And then finally, let's just add it all up. the biggest thing is the ground cover by far, and then the kind of planning stage is about £3,000, and the canopy and the shrubs come in at £3,000. So it's kind of interesting. It's a really interesting thing. So £18,000 for, if you were to say to me, I have a 1 acre greenfield site, I want to have a complete forest garden there, how much would it cost? I will say to you £17,980, or I'll say 18,000. Let's call it 20 grand, round it up. So £20,000 then to do it 1 acre. So that's really kind of, yeah, it's a really interesting exercise to do, but that puts a price on it. That's how much a forest garden costs. So there we go. Right. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to jump over to Zoom now. I will take questions in a second. So what I will do, I'll say thank you very much for watching.